Welcome back to this channel. It's your resident internet psychic medium and spiritual advisor, Mr. Crane, and today I want to talk to you about your childhood and perhaps the trauma that came with it. So, the point of this video is to offer up a different perspective on how to view your childhood and all of your childhood trauma. To give you a different way of looking at things from a higher, hopefully evolved perspective, okay? This is not meant to discount or negate your experiences, invalidate whatever it was that you've gone through. It's about helping you understand it from a different lens so you can heal, grow, and move on. So, here's the thing about childhood trauma. Work with me here. Not only does everyone have it, including the people that say, oh, I actually had a really good childhood, there's still aspects of that childhood that were traumatic, right? And sometimes what happens is that people may not necessarily address it right away because they may feel like other people have worse stories, or they may be in a part of their journey where it hasn't shown itself yet. So maybe they're not necessarily aware of it because the childhood trauma really only starts coming out when you're an adult, right? But the thing with childhood trauma is that not only does everyone have childhood trauma, trauma is the essence of childhood. That is what childhood is. It is trauma, right? And it's needed because without it, the strength that you would need to develop, your ability to be the fittest, first being survival of the fittest, would not develop in the way that it needs to develop in order to sustain you and to keep you alive. And so in order to have that happen, you go through many traumatic experiences to prepare you for the animal kingdom. Now, as humans, people oftentimes negate the fact that they are in fact animals and that we are in fact a part of the animal kingdom. And for some reason, somehow along the way, humans have adopted this idea that we are the smartest of all the animals and that it's not really us. It only applies to everybody else or every other animal, but we are still animals and the rules of the animal kingdom apply. You don't have an ability to feed yourself, to look after yourself, to protect yourself, to get water, to wipe your own ass. You are completely vulnerable to the animal kingdom, to the wild. And the caretaker that you have is also vulnerable to the wild. And even though that caretaker has developed some form of survival skill, they are also still vulnerable to the wild. An alpha lion in the pack is still vulnerable to the wild. And if it doesn't stay hypervigilant, it can be taken out, right? If you think about a giraffe, when it's born, it falls like 6 feet and you pray to God it doesn't land on its head. You think about a turtle when it hatches, how it has to crawl out of a ditch and while blind, somehow make it to the ocean. And that's like the dangerous part of the journey. And it was just born. And then once it gets in the ocean, it has to hope that it doesn't get eaten for like 100 years. These dinosaurs that are swimming in the goddamn sea. And every animal is going through this. Every animal is vulnerable to attack. And they're more vulnerable when they are babies. All animals are like this. If I look at my dog, my poor Duchess, she is so heavily domesticated, she would not survive 10 minutes out in the wild. When she gets out and she likes to run through the neighborhood, when I tell you, I'm like, please, Lord, don't let there be a quail. Because if God forbid a coyote jumped out of the bushes, that's the end of her. Seriously. She wouldn't know how to identify the danger. Nor would she be equipped to take care of herself and defend herself. She would think it's a friend. She wouldn't have the slightest idea if it wasn't for me. She's just going throughout life living as a duchess. And like other dogs do, when she's hungry, she will wait and wait and wait until I feed her. And if I don't feed her, then she's just shit out of luck, right? That is what it's like to be a baby. As a baby, you are most vulnerable because you are small, you are weak, and you are easy prey. But guess what else is prey. Baby of any animal is prey. You have animals that will have a baby and then turn around and then eat the baby it just had, right? It is a food source. And so why did things happen to you when you were younger? It happened to you because you were smaller. It happened to you because you were weaker. It happened to you because you were dumber. Because you were vulnerable. You didn't have the knowledge, the wisdom, or the street smart. You weren't big enough to have the physical strength in order to defend yourself, from a predator. You were vulnerable and you came in like all animals do in the animal kingdom. And through the experiences that you went through, it made you smarter, it made you faster, and it made you stronger. And that is why you are where you are today. Because there's a lot of you who have had many times, if you really reflect on your life, where you're like, I should not be alive right now. I don't know how I made it through that. I shouldn't have lived to be able to tell the tale, but here you are. Because why? You are part of the fittest when you're thinking about survival of the fittest. Not everybody is the fittest, right? Some of you have family members that did not make it out. They were not the fittest of all of the animals, of all of the humans in your pack. I have family members that did not make it out. They were not the fittest of all of the animals in our pack, in our family pack. That's just the way it is. The fastest, the smartest, and the strongest make it out. And if they're not the fastest, the smartest, or the strongest, then they're the lucky, right? But childhood trauma exists for everybody, and it exists because it's a product of being a part of the animal kingdom. We are in the wild, and we have tricked ourselves into believing that because there is some sort of civilization that we have somehow managed to form in a really messed up kind of way, or if there's somehow some kind of society that we are now domesticated animals. But we're not really all that domesticated. We're actually very feral, which is why you can turn on the news and you hear nothing about crazy stories of how humans are behaving with other humans, because we're actually feral. And the ones that look domesticated are the ones that just have really good discipline and self-control. But we are feral animals, and this is the wild. And we have to remember that animals, right, have their own civilizations. We call those packs or herds, right? But they have their own societies as well. It's no different, but they're still in the wild. Humans are still a part of the wild. And when you are not educated by the wild, i.e. what we interpret to be childhood trauma, then you become susceptible to the wild. Because all of the trauma that you have gone through has made you smarter, faster, and stronger. Think about the time somebody will say to you, hey, can you help me here? And your mind immediately is like, this is a lie. This is a scam. You're full of shit. That is your survival instincts kicking in because you had to learn the lesson through most likely some traumatic event when you were younger, or you watched someone close to you when you were younger have some sort of traumatic event that reinforced this idea that this thing over here can potentially be dangerous when it comes to our humanity and our mortality. Fighting for mortality is a product of all aspects of the animal kingdom. Seeing what and who can stay alive for the longest period of time. And so when you think about, for so many people, there's this, a lot of people have fear, this sort of underlying residual fear that's always sort of flowing in this energy current. There are times in life where it's more apparent than in other parts of life, right? But there's always this underlying energy current, and we interpret that as fear, but it's not. It is the part of the instinct that is staying hypervigilant because we are animals in the wild, and it's just trying to make sure that we stay alive. And we look at it as, oh my God, I'm afraid of something. Now, could you be afraid of something? Yeah, possibly, right? Could it be anxiety? Sure. But there's also an aspect to ourselves that we oftentimes disregard that is just instinct and instinct alone. And the instinct is what's keeping us aware of our surroundings and aware of other people and thinking about that tone of voice that somebody just used. And did I pick up what I think I picked up when it comes to that thing? Because we are animals and we are always going to be in survival mode because it is survival of the fittest. And that childhood trauma, or the trauma that we think that we are experiencing, is a part of what makes us an animal itself. We, as humans, we still hunt. We still manipulate. We could sit here and be like, oh, I'm so amazing. But everybody does this to some degree, right? You can go into a situation and manipulate it to the point where you're like, oh, maybe I can cut a deal on this thing. You think this store will give me a discount? Maybe when you go to a car dealership and you try to get some money off, you are being an animal. You are in a space of manipulating in order for it to serve you. That is what animals do. You hunt. We are hunting. And our hunting, it doesn't look like necessarily a bow and an arrow. It has evolved to fit the circumstances that we are now experiencing in our reality, but it's still a form of hunting, right? Anybody ever go to a food court in a mall and then you quickly suss out what line is the longest? It is noon, 1 p.m. You're really hungry. You're trying to walk faster to get to the line first, because if the line gets longer, you're not going to want to stand there. It is a different form of hunting for food, right? And so everything that we've experienced as children, due to the fact that we are just smaller, weaker, and dumber, right? We're interpreting it as trauma, but what's really occurring is the animal kingdom unfolding. The animal kingdom just doing what it does. Because if you ever sit there long enough and you watch National Geographic, you'll realize that, like, that's a whole lot of trauma. You ever seen an alligator get eaten or beat up by like a herd of hippos? There's this one video that's circulating the internet where like this alligator ate a baby hippo, and so then the herd of hippos beat his ass and then drowned him in the lake. The herd, like the family of hippos, right? Like, to an onlooker, that's a little bit, that's kind of trauma. You ever seen a bird swoop down into a lake or an ocean and pick out a fish? Right? You ever had a fish at home and a cat, and then you come home and your cat ate your fish? You ever had a cat and a dog and then they start fighting with each other? Like, this is the animal kingdom. This is trauma. And those things that we look at and we go, oh, look at those animals being animals. This is what's happening to us when we're babies. It's the same thing, right? Eat or be eaten, kill or kill. You know, it's like that kind of thing. And so when you are looking at like what happened to you, remember that there's another aspect to it. Don't go into the space of, oh, it's me, oh, I'm the problem, all bad things are always happening to me. Sometimes it's not always that. Now, again, I really want to reiterate, this is not me trying to invalidate your situation, because everyone's situation is different and everyone's situation is very unique. But there are some aspects of trauma that are just about whether or not you were the fittest in the game of survival. And when you are younger, you are not, because you're weak and you're easy prey, right? And you also have to remember that your caregiver, although they may be an adult, they're still in the wild too. And they're still also trying to figure out how to survive and maintain their basic needs while dealing with the fact that their instincts are also on overdrive, right? And so not only are their instincts perking up, trying to make sure that they're okay, and they also may kind of be a little bit weak and kind of dumb, and, you know, because like, just because you become an adult doesn't mean you gain all the strength. You may have just been a little bit stronger than maybe a baby that you laid next to in the hospital, if you're trying to understand, you know, if you catch my drift. Follow what I'm saying here, okay? And so you're still trying not to allow what happened to you when you were younger to repeat itself. And then you've got a baby or a young one over here tugging on you for everything, needing you for its own survival. And you're like, I'm trying to survive myself. And then we go, childhood trauma, nobody loves me. It has nothing to do with any of that. Sometimes we have to remember that we are animals and the rules of the animal kingdom apply. God forbid you incarnate as a male black widow spider. Okay? That's not working out for you. You are not the fittest. And it's only a matter of time before you get your head ripped off. God forbid you incarnate as a drone bee, a male bee. You are automatically not the fittest, and after you mate with the queen, your testicles are exploding and you're blowing up in midair. Okay? It's the rule of the animal kingdom. And so when you're looking at your trauma, evaluate what came out of that. What did you learn? What strength was developed? And for some people, that strength, it can be mental fortitude or it can be physical strength, like muscles. Some people have had things happen to them where they're like, that will never happen again. And they are super fit now because they are like human muscle powerhouses because of what happened to them. Maybe they were overpowered. And so it created a situation where they now make sure that that will never happen to them again and that they will always be the ones that are not overpowering. They will always be the one that is capable of being in the predator position as opposed to being the prey, right? It has trained them. It's a training ground. It's a training camp. And we have to remember too, as babies, you are just naturally vulnerable. Naturally vulnerable. It has nothing to do with, oh, why me? What did I do wrong? We are playing the game. And in this incarnation, in this simulation, there's a lot of games that are happening at one time. There's a lot of rule books that are happening at one time due to all the games that are being played. And one of the games that people routinely forget is the rule in the game of the animal kingdom because people don't like to think that they themselves are also animals. This is why when I come across people that are really grimy, really slimy, really manipulative, I'm like, oh, okay. Do I like you? No. Can we hang out? No. Can we be any form of acquaintance? Absolutely not. But do I understand that you are fully living within your animal and in your instinct? Yeah, I get that, right? Now, is that a problem for me? Absolutely, because I don't want to get bit today, right? But I'm also understanding that like you are just doing what animals do, which is hunt for food. And unfortunately, when you are the smallest and the weakest and the dumbest out of all of the animals available, sometimes what happens is that you become the food. Now, again, this is not to invalidate your experiences. This is just to offer up an alternative perspective. Before I let you go, I picked some cards because I just wanted to see what did y'all need to work on. So this is from the Inner Child Oracle deck, these cards. And so the two cards that came out, was you do not have to go it alone. Reach out for support in this time, which makes sense because sometimes for people, when they are experiencing their trauma in childhood, it can be such an isolating feeling where you feel like there is nobody to protect you. Where was your protector, right? While forgetting that in the animal kingdom, there aren't any protectors. There's an attempt, right? But in the animal kingdom, you will notice that their societies that they form are in groups, are in herds, because there are power in numbers. And it's hard to be the fittest when you are a number of one. And this is why a lot of animals move together, because they recognize that, and they recognize that there are strength in numbers, right? And so when it comes to you, it's the same thing. There are strength in numbers. You don't have to do everything alone. And just because you may have had childhood trauma when you were younger that made you feel like you were alone doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be the situation today. That you can empower yourself enough to form a pack around you because there are strength in numbers. And if you are always by yourself and you feel weaker or at a disadvantage, it's because you are. Where is your society? If the society that you were born into does not work for you, then empower yourself to know that you can, in fact, create your own society of people in numbers. You don't have to do everything by yourself. But if that society forms, it's entirely up to you, because what happens in your life, your success and your outcome is up to how much of a pity party you're going to choose to throw for yourself, and how sorry do you want to feel for yourself. Do you want to feel sorry for yourself in a ball on the floor, or do you want to feel sorry for yourself but at least you're standing up? I'm going to let you choose which one you feel like is going to work best for you. And then the next one is to set boundaries, claim your power, and know your value today. So much of being the fittest is not allowing people to overtake. This is why if you try to overtake an alpha in a pack, that is the end of you, because you overstepped a boundary. Animals have boundaries. We are animals. So why do you not have boundaries that you have set for yourself? For other people to either respect or hate, it's up to them, but it's for your protection in the animal kingdom. That is why you need to have it. My dog, right? She's very friendly when it comes to food. She'll share all her food. But there are a lot of dogs out there where you cannot get close to their food bowl. Why? Because it is a resource. Because food keeps them alive. Why would it let you get close to its food source? Why would it let you get close to something that you have an ability to take away that will impact their mortality and when they die? If they have trauma when they were a younger pup of people not feeding them or taking away their food, why would they be open to sharing it with you now? No, that's a boundary. When female animals have their little pups or their little babies, their boundaries are you cannot get close to it. Why? Because they recognize on an instinctual level that it is small, that it is weak, and that it is dumb. It cannot trust you, a full-grown animal, with its baby that's oftentimes the size of your hand. Why would it do that? That's a boundary, right? You see it everywhere within the animal kingdom. And so it's time for you, being an animal, to have it for yourself. It's not about, well, I don't want to make other people upset. You're upset. You prefer that? You prefer to be the one that's actually upset? Because everybody else is always going to be upset. There's nothing that you can do in order to stop that. But what you can do is remember that you are an animal and protect your mortality. Because it's survival of the fittest. And if you have no boundaries, then you become an easy target and you become easy prey. And now that you have the knowledge and the wisdom that that's what you become, then why would you continue to make the decision not to have a boundary? Anyway, that's my piece for the day. And as always, if you like what you see, subscribe to this channel. And if we don't meet again, I'll see you next lifetime.